Ray Creators ended and I almost forgot to write my final thoughts. Whoop de fucking do. Actually, I didn't forget. I've just been busy with real life. Yet, at the same time, if I had felt compelled to, I would have made this video ages ago. This should give a fair idea of how I feel about the ending of the series and the series overall. I neither liked nor hated the ending. This doesn't mean I was neutral. Instead, I was largely indifferent with occasional bouts of not knowing how pissed I should be. I decided to approach it from a what went wrong perspective. Ironically, the point at which the series starts to go off the rails is during the best arc, namely the events leading to Mamika's death, her death, and the aftermath. By the end of the first arc, most of the important characters are introduced, motivations are explained, subplots are developing, and the whole gist of the story is understood. Magane, like a proper troll, breaks the fourth wall, setting us in what we hoped would be an epic second half. Except no, it wasn't. Let me start with the recap episode. I enjoyed this episode to a certain extent. However, no matter how well presented it is, a recap is still a recap. To me, recaps feel like the tools of a larger dead era. You know, the dark ages before the internet. In those days, recaps had a place. You couldn't easily re-watch TV episodes that had already passed or even look them up on the internet. So you could count on the good old recap to remind you of all the plot points you forgot. It's not that recaps don't have a place in anime. Imagine watching a weekly airing anime with 52 episodes. 52 episodes doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it still represents an entire year. A recap becomes useful in this scenario for several reasons. One is the obvious refresher. Another is that recaps focus on the main plot, showing events, outcomes, and how they affect others. If you'd put the series on hold and wanted to continue without retreading, the recap would come in handy. I've personally never watched a recap episode for this reason, but surely some people do. Also, recaps represent a boundary of sorts, showing that the first half has ended and now we get to the juicy stuff. However, despite the usefulness of recaps, I cannot stress enough that this is in the instance of a long series. Ironically, really long series use recaps less often and instead rely on another much discussed tool, flashbacks. Anyway, what I'm getting to is that a series like Ray Creators, being only 21 real episodes, didn't need a recap. The one we got was particularly egregious because it occurred right when people were psyched and it drained the energy instead of heightening it like the creators probably had hoped. Plus, it preceded that awful two delays which I will talk about in a moment. Finally, as stated, recaps summarize the main plot and cut away the extra. Useful when a lot of time has passed, but utterly pointless for short series like Ray Creators. People would already know the main stuff, but have forgotten the details, the stuff that recaps don't typically show. I think another main problem with recaps is that people see them for what they are, cheap attempts to pad out the runtime of a series, and people hate being dicked around. If creators really want to keep people up to speed, they should find more effective and entertaining ways to do so. Like I said, Recreators tried, it really did. But despite the commentary and the epicness of Meteora, it was just an edit of previous episodes. Why not do a recap from the villain's point of view? Or better yet, from bystanders? This would have been particularly effective for a meta series like Recreators. Or troll fans like I think Kill la Kill did a few years ago. Or better yet, if the series can legit be binge watched in a single day without sacrificing sleep, food, and exercise, then don't make a recap episode. Ray Zero had no recap, and it was great. Attack on Titan did, but in the case of Attack on Titan, there was momentum, and not a clear demarcation of the falling quality of the series. I may be particularly hard on recap episodes because I hold them to the exalted standards set by Ergo Proxy, a series with a recap episode so out there but brilliantly done that it's one of the best and most memorable episodes in the entire series. And when you're talking about a show like Ergo Proxy, that's nothing to sneeze at. But anyway, moving along. I'll move on to the next what went wrong, namely the delay of episodes 16 and 17 and episodes 16 and 17 themselves. If I were to be cynical, I would say that these were deliberate attempts to pad the series, like the recap. But this isn't some kind of perfect world where the only things that affect you are your own decisions. I think it's possible that the studio did have some real issues. That doesn't change the fact that those delays killed something in the series. It wasn't necessarily the delays themselves, but how they were done. Episode 16 was a week late, then aired. Then there was another week's delay, and then episode 17 aired. This was unimaginably annoying. I posed the question, why didn't they just go on a 2 or 3 week hiatus, resolve the problem, and then restart the series? I kinda answered my own question. I remember hearing once that TV slots are ultra competitive in Japan, so unless your series is super, super popular, there's no guarantee that you would regain a spot after a certain hiatus. I mean, I would suppose if you already won the slot and you and the station agreed on a set amount of time or number of episodes, then they, the studio, wouldn't be such assholes to give away your spot because of something you presumably couldn't control. This is especially evident in the fact that the series was allowed to be delayed in the first place. But again, cynical me talking. It didn't help matters that the episodes leading up to episode 17 and 16 were a bit flat. It was great to see the characters working together, overcoming artistic and personality differences, and the background of the whole birdcage event. However, it became tiresome after a while because it simultaneously showed too much and too little. Too much in the sense that it lingered on the main characters working towards the event, so much so that this probably counts as creator oriented fan service. It was nice to see background information on the hardships of creating anime and manga, but we already have an anime that does that, and allegedly much better. It's called Bakuman. On the topic of too little, while there was a sense of scope, there was no sense of time. I think the time from the decision to launch the event to its actual inception was about 6 months. The series, however, didn't possibly highlight the passage of time. We, the audience, weren't able to quickly grasp how much time passed between each episode, and more importantly, how much time was left. This reduced any sense of urgency. It genuinely felt like only a month or two had passed in universe, and I think that had more to do with the fact that I had to wait for episodes to air. Again, a shift in perspective would have been useful at this point. These episodes could have been used to show how the relationships between all the characters developed and or changed during this time, outside of their interactions while working. Sho and Hikayu in particular suffered in this regard since they were introduced later. Were there any conflicts between Hikayu and the other creations because of ideological differences? All of the others came from worlds where they had to fight to survive. She came from Eroge. How did they become friends that would fight and die for each other? What did Sho do during this interval? He was too much of a hothead to not attack Yuya, the man he blamed for the death of his sister, during this time. What did Magane do? What did the government do about Magane? She murdered 2 people in less than 3 days. Did she go on a murderous rampage during the lull to prevent herself from being bored? Or did she just troll people during this time? In short, what the hell happened in those 6 months of preparation?